All right, just some brief discussion on the emerging professional grifter class, followed by Munchausen by proxy. So, what am I talking about by the emerging professional grifter class? Well, somewhere between 2 and 4 years ago, depending on which American college or university you're looking at, many of these institutions came up with degree programs specifically in the field of either social justice or social activism. So, as of approximately 2018, it was no longer necessary to be an actual, genuine victim of some circumstance in order to gain the credibility to go on and become an activist. No, you could be a 20-year-old high school senior in New Jersey, not exactly sure what you want to do with your life yet, but the Coast Guard wasn't for you, so you've basically settled on Eastern Kentucky University. Well, go have a look because while there, you could attend the School of Justice Studies, where you could major in social justice studies to get your Bachelor of Arts. Here's a list of some of the electives that you'll be able to choose from in that degree program: social justice in media, social justice in film, conflict resistance and nonviolent struggle, states of violence, critical carceral studies, and ethnography for social change. Of course, ethnography for social change, because as we all know, the ethnography or autoethnography is the unfalsifiable PhD that contains social theories for which there is no empirical evidence, only a subjective point of view that is cast in the PhD as experience. And of course, no one could identify with another individual's exact experience. Therefore, who are we to challenge those notions? Therefore, they're simply valid. That's essentially the autoethnography. It's about as unacademic as you can possibly get. And the fact that the universities continue to churn these things out is only rapidly increasing the degree to which they discredit themselves further every time they issue another one of these pieces of garbage. And I stand by that. They are absolutely worthless tools if they are abused in this way. There is value, and I've talked about this in other videos, to the autoethnography, but abusing them in order to give yourself some illegitimate social point of view as a basis to go out and foist your ideas on society. No, that's not scientific. It's not academic, and quite frankly, it's not even logical or rational. So the fact that no one appears to see this, and the institution continues to run amok, handing these things out, is unbelievable. But they will continue to discredit themselves for as long as they do that. It's only a matter of time. You could also go to UNT Dallas, where they offer a Justice and Social Policy Bachelor of Arts. You could go to the University of Iowa. Here are a couple from Iowa. How about Gender, Women's, and Sexuality Studies Bachelor of Arts? Or Social Justice Bachelor of Arts? And then there is my alma mater as an undergrad, Ithaca College, always on the cutting edge of irrelevancy, where they now offer a Bachelor of Arts in Race, Power, and Resistance. Because Ithaca, New York is the epicenter for that, for sure. No doubt, huh? So this is essentially what's going on. We are training a new class of professional grifters. It isn't necessary to be an organic activist, apparently. In my view, I would assert that's the only thing that gave you any credibility in the past was the fact that you happen to be an ordinary person. You were going through some ordinary or what you expected to be ordinary set of circumstances, and instead you were mistreated or abused or you suffered some consequence. In some way, you are a genuine victim and you suffered some genuine loss, and it was unfair to you for whatever reason. Those are the people who have a legitimate basis to go on and become activists. You see, that gives them credibility. They know what they're talking about. They have a basis to want to advocate on behalf of changing something versus people who went and earned college degrees in a field and then I suppose then they just chose which thing they wanted to advocate for. Supposedly it's not field specific. Is that what they're trying to purport here? They're not just training brown shirts to go out and begin agitating for their nutty ideas that they're trying to foist on the rest of society. That's not it, because that's what I'm seeing. I call them a class of grifters, and I don't use that word to try and get a laugh or to use hyperbole. A grifter is someone who's designed as a person engaging in a series of small-scale swindling, for example. And that's exactly what they're doing. What these people will do when they graduate is they will typically open an LLC for anywhere between $50 and a couple $100, depending on the state. In Texas, it's $300. Then that will serve as the umbrella to accept corporate donations that they might disperse out to their friends in other areas for other agitating type of groups. Then they will also open a for-profit, again, somewhere between $50 and a couple $100. Texas is about $350 for that. And this is what you'll use to get paid under when you go to give keynote addresses at colleges and when you join the Justice Summit, for example, that some university may have. Note the deliberate ambiguity in the terminology that they trot out in front of you. Justice, diversity, privilege. Make no mistake about it, the ambiguity of terminology is the totalitarian component of this movement. Those words are trotted out, and you are to obey. You hear the word justice, don't you dare ask what kind of justice, or justice for whom, or justice for what. Now you just hear the word justice, and you're supposed to start salivating, just like Pavlov's dog. The ambiguity of terminology is the totalitarian component of this movement. Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. We'll talk about that in another video. So basically, once you have the LLC started and you have the for-profit started, then you can go around and collect speaking fees every time you participate somewhere. And these people all end up knowing each other. So they all end up funding and hiring each other and abusing this system. And it's just it's really turning into an ugly, unacademic, unscholarly, unethical, and unprofessional, unmitigated disaster. That's what we're looking at here. Now, on to Munchausen by proxy. So, Gadsad had come up with the idea that we were looking at a type of collective Munchausen amongst this new class of victims. In other words, I am a victim, therefore I am. In a nutshell, that people are finding their identity through victimhood. They are becoming something. And so this was collective Munchausen. And I really think he was onto something there. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think that's an accurate moniker for that social phenomenon that we're looking at. But it really only explains half of that dynamic, because with the professional grifter class, now you have an entire group of people who are advocating and agitating for social change when there is no need for it. There's no demand from society. They don't even have empirical evidence that they can point to. They use ridiculous words when they can't point to actual racism or bias, like institutionalized racism. Well, what does that mean? You're just saying racism within an institution. It doesn't tell me anything. You can't use the words that you're trying to define in the definition. I mean, these aren't clever tricks that they're using. There's absolutely nothing to it. So the idea that the United States is somehow this racist cauldron of boiling hatred, and we've just got to do something about this white supremacy and white privilege. And how is it that white privilege and white supremacy only seems to affect one other race of people? And actually, if you do the surveys on it and you look at the data, it doesn't affect all black people. Somehow the West Indians seem to avoid it somehow. They seem to do just fine. So it doesn't affect all blacks. So somehow white privilege is able to discern West Indian black from African black. Somehow, I don't know. No one's ever trained me how to do that. And also Asians and Jews just totally avoid it. They're never affected by white privilege. And we haven't really figured out yet if that's just because white people think they're sort of cool or if they can't find a way to get over on them. But you could bet that these social activists are hard at work on answering that question. So on the way. All we're looking at here is people who are the firefighters or purporting to be the firefighters, but they are at the same time the arsonists. They are creating and giving the impression or the illusion that there is some problem because that backdrop needs to exist in order to support their nutty ideas and their careers. Once the facade of the United States being a horribly racist country and people being treated unfairly all the time because of it, once that facade comes down, this is all over. Everyone will realize that these are nothing but a group of naked emperor grifters. So it's important to keep in mind the law of diminishing returns. For example, what would net zero racism look like? Is that the idea that somehow we just have to keep going until we've stomped it out everywhere? I don't care what people feel in their hearts or think in their heads. I can't do anything about that. I can contribute to a conversation that may persuade people, but that's it. So the only type of bias that I'm concerned with is discrimination, where people actively take an action to treat someone unfairly, because it's the only type that we can actually do something about. And there is next to zero of that in the United States. You live in the freest, wealthiest, most open society of all time. Not perfect, never will be perfect. But is there another country where you would rather be tried for a capital offense? Is there another country where you would trust people in the government if you had to remain in their custody for some brief time for whatever reason? They're moving the goalposts. And for as long as we continue to let them do this, what we're actually looking at is Munchausen by proxy. It's not just the victim class that is purporting to be victims and thereby creating this illusion of collective Munchausen. You now have the professional grifter class who have a vested financial interest in the continued perpetuation of this illusion of racism and bigotry and bias until the end of time. Because when that goes away, they have to get real jobs. And when they have to get real jobs, that means they have to compete with everyone else for a real job. And that means they won't get it because they're incompetent and incapable. And I stand by that assertion. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I just wanted to try to illuminate a little bit about the emerging professional grifter class. They're going to be a huge problem in the years to come. Keep an eye on these LLCs that they're using to fuel this nonsense with. And for your consideration, Munchausen by proxy. And I'll catch up with you on the next one.